if you do pose, oh, thank you, Katie. We are recording the meeting so that we can take good notes. And then if you have a question in the Q&A and we don't answer it during the meeting, we will get to it at the end. It's just we may be holding it because we think it's something many people might want to hear. And so we'll try to address those at the end. But otherwise, we may also answer them in the Q&A itself if you want to monitor that as we go. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jennifer Bice and ask her to introduce herself. She'll be walking us through this plan today.
Thanks, Sabrina, and thank you everyone for being here this evening. My name is Jennifer Bice, and I'm the Director of Data Policy and Strategy here at the Department of Housing Stability. And I'm glad to be here with you all tonight to talk a bit about our proposed 2023 action plan and hear your questions and get your feedback. So in terms of kind of just a broad overview of our time together today, we will start with just a quick overview of our 5-year strategic plan, since this 2023 action plan is really our 1-year snapshot of that broader long-term plan. So we'll just do a brief grounding there and then spend a good chunk of our time this evening really talking about our proposed 2023 priorities. And this is where we will be using a survey tool called Mentimeter to gather some of your feedback during the meeting. So there's some information on your screen here for how to do that. And we'll also repeat that when we get to those sections, but menti.com and entering the code 780828. From there, we'll talk about our financial landscape. So this is where we really talk about how our budget comes together to support the priorities that we see for the year ahead. And then we'll close with just some brief kind of where to go to find out more information on how we're doing on our 5-year plan, and then open it up for questions. And so, as Sabrina mentioned, we have the Q&A feature here on Zoom tonight where you can ask your questions. And then we'll also have some time at the end if anybody wants to ask their questions out loud. So just briefly on our 5-year plan overview. So last year, HOST had our strategic plan, our 5-year strategic plan for 2022 to 2026, approved by City Council. And through that work, we really worked hard to establish vision statements or impact statements for the future we want to create with the community and with our partners. So I wanted to start here tonight because hopefully, as you will see as we go through, our priorities are really aligned toward these impact statements and aligned toward our goals, which are coming up next. So really, all of our work here at HOST is grounded in our commitment to advancing equity, where race no longer predicts outcomes for involuntary displacement, homelessness, homeownership, or cost burden. You'll also see on this slide some information on how we kind of conceptualize our work here at HOST in terms of 3 outcome-oriented pillars, and then our operations work that supports across the whole department. And so in our housing opportunity lane of work, we want residents to have equitable access to housing options that meet their affordability needs and the opportunity to increase wealth through homeownership. In our housing stability lane of work, we want residents to have choice in when and under what circumstances they move or remain in their homes and neighborhoods. And in homelessness resolution, residents should experience homelessness rarely. And if they do, that experience should be brief and one time. Like communications and finance and data and strategic planning, we want residents and partners to receive efficient, timely, and transparent support and have confidence that HOST is measuring what matters and effectively engaging the community. From those impact statements, those very kind of visionary statements, we identified 14 specific goals, and these are all measurable. And we have a tool we'll talk about a bit later where you can see how we're doing. But our goals are a bit more specific in terms of what we want to achieve by the end of 2026. So we want to expand access to affordable housing opportunities, preserve existing affordable homes, expand home ownership, help folks have choice and when they remain or move, help households remain in their homes and neighborhoods of choice, reducing evictions, reducing foreclosures, addressing unsheltered homelessness, expanding pathways to housing, which we know are the solutions to homelessness, completing our transformation of our shelter system and improving our homelessness resolution system for families. And then in our operations work, expanding communications and engagement, supporting partnerships through transparent, efficient, and effective processes in our contracts, procurement, and financial spaces, deepening our data infrastructure to support data-informed decision-making and continuous improvement, and advancing citywide and regional approaches, including our policy and legislative efforts. So that's kind of the big picture grounding that we kind of look to the year ahead and really chart forth what are we setting out to achieve next year that makes progress toward those goals. And so in these 2023 priorities, we are starting with kind of our highest level of some of our key departmental goals for the year ahead. And so we'll walk through these and then we'll have an opportunity at the end of the 2 slides from now to get your feedback on these priorities. So first, focusing in our housing opportunity space, we will create and preserve more than 1,700 affordable homes in the year ahead. We are also really focusing this year on expanding home ownership, both through down payment assistance as well as a targeted investment in creating more affordable for sale homes. In our housing stability space, we anticipate serving more than 8,000 households in housing stability programs. That includes more than 1,700 households in eviction legal defense programs, as well as 250 households in new foreclosure prevention and HOA fee assistance programs that are proposed in the mayor's budget. Additionally, we will serve more than 2,500 households experiencing homelessness in housing programs and house more than 1,700 households experiencing homelessness from all of our programs that we fund. In our work to address unsheltered homelessness in the year ahead, we will implement an encampment decommissioning strategy. We can talk more about what that specifically means as we get to the homelessness resolution section tonight. And also by continuing to support safe outdoor space and safe parking programs. We're also really focused in the year ahead on homelessness resolution systems for families, investing in hotel options that provide safe places for folks to stay when they're in need of that temporary accommodation, as well as focusing on those solutions through expanding case management and housing. Additionally, in the year ahead, we intend to commission a disparity study. This is a study that would assess and document racial disparities and discrimination in housing in Denver, and would propose solutions that can further our work to advance equity. We will also release a new publicly available financial dashboard that will provide additional transparency into how HOST uses our resources. We are also anticipating expanding functionality in the use of data systems to support more efficient electronic contracting and invoice process tracking so that process is more timely and efficient for our team as well as our partners. And lastly, we are preparing to implement the Affordable Housing Prioritization Policy, which was recently passed by City Council last month. As part of that includes building out and developing a data system that will improve access to affordable housing citywide. And with that, we're going to pause and take our first Menti poll. So please, the URL is up on your screen. So if you would like to participate, please head over to menti.com and enter that code. And Katie, if there are any additional instructions you would give on that, please feel free to jump in.
And Jordan, I do see your question. We'll get to that here momentarily. else want to jump on there and give us some input on the overall priorities? All right, well then I think we'll go ahead and move on to the next question.
So this next question just gives you a little bit of space for some more kind of qualitative or narrative feedback that you might have.
Mary, I see your comment and question as well. We will get to that here in just a minute after we get our feedback.
I can also leave this question open and we can continue with the PowerPoint presentation while people continue to fill in this feedback.
Great. Thank you, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, do you want to take those questions now before you keep going, or would you rather hold on?
I think the disparity study question definitely relates to this slide, so I can address that now here, and then I think we'll talk a little bit on how we're doing meeting our 2022 goals at the end in terms of how you can find out how we're doing progress so far this year. And Mary, I can also speak a bit to particular to the housing unit targets, which is where we had an overall 7,000 unit goal. What that is in terms of a percentage when we get to the slide on the unit detail.
Great, thank you.
Yep. All right, so this slide is not exhaustive, although I recognize there are a lot of bullet points on it. But this slide highlights some of our strategies as we've gone through our planning process this year that really are central to our work to advance equity. And so first at the top of the list is again that disparity study that we already highlighted. And we are in the process right now of really reviewing kind of the landscape of disparity studies in the housing space. Typically, the examples that we have within the city come to us from minority and women-owned business programs. So focusing in on those race and gender identities, but we are doing that scan to understand how other communities have approached this so that we can develop a procurement to issue issue a procurement for an evaluator. So to the question that was posed, which was, will it include discrimination related to disability? I think that's something that we are identifying, and that feedback is helpful as we're doing that review. Another one of our strategies that's really core to our work to advance equity this year is that we are implementing mandatory affordable housing, another significant policy achievement of 2022, which will help us create more affordable housing citywide, especially in areas of opportunity in our city. We'll also be continuing to support community land trust models and other innovative concepts that preserve long-term affordability for homeownership. We anticipate expanding down payment assistance programs to build pathways to homeownership, particularly for households impacted by past redlining practices. Additionally, we are expanding our community navigation partnerships in vulnerable neighborhoods, or neighborhoods vulnerable to involuntary displacement, in partnership with the city's neighborhood equity stabilization team, and partnering across city agencies to review the impacts of capital investments and whether and how we mitigate for involuntary displacement risks that are created there. We are also using data from Denver County Court to help us better target eviction resources to those neighborhoods with the highest rates of eviction. Additionally, we are continuing to seek to meet the diverse needs of residents by expanding rehousing strategies for residents experiencing homelessness and increasing shelter options that are gender inclusive and designed for all gender identities. Additionally, we are supporting income-based strategies to homelessness resolution, and we are excited for our partnership with the Denver Basic Income Project, which will be launching here in the end of this year and then continuing into 2023. Additionally, we are expanding community engagement and developing processes for getting community feedback, particularly focused on community members with lived experience of housing instability, affordable housing, and homelessness. And lastly, as I mentioned, we continue to use data to advance equity and are particularly excited about this data system that we are seeking to develop that will make it easier to access affordable housing and implement our prioritization policy, which would give residents who've experienced displacement or who are at risk of involuntary displacement priority access to a portion of affordable housing units in the city. This next slide takes a bit of a deeper dive into our work in our housing opportunities space. And in the coming year, we really have some deep focuses in our first goal and our third goal of the plan. So in our work to expand access to affordable housing opportunities, as I mentioned, we will create and preserve more than 1,700 affordable homes through investment in our current pipeline, strategic acquisition of hotels, and effective implementation of that mandatory affordable housing ordinance. This is part of a goal for getting to 7,000 units created and preserved by the end of 2026. And 20% of that goal is about 1,400 units. So this gets us, does more than what is kind of a higher percentage than would be that annual average that we would need to hit to get to that 7,000 unit goal. And we are definitely aided this year through a significant allocation of the city's American Rescue Plan Act COVID recovery resources, which we'll talk a little bit more when we get to the financial landscape section. Also this year, we're excited to be increasing the efficiency with which affordable housing projects can move through the city's planning and development review processes. We're partnering with community planning and development and other city agencies to implement the Affordable Housing Review Team, which is a dedicated team focused on those projects. Our third goal, expanding homeownership. This is again another area where we have some exciting ARPA investments, which will include leveraging ARPA to scale up down payment assistance programs, as well as to do a targeted investment to increase the supply of affordable housing opportunities so that we have more affordable for sale homes for folks to buy. And then again, that disparity study, which will help us in our homeownership work, hopefully, as well as other spaces. This slide just provides a bit more detail in terms of that more than 1,700 unit goal for the year. So you can see how many of those units are rental, how many are for sale, how many are supportive housing, those types of things. So here you can see rental homes created, about half of the total units will be rental homes. Of those, just over 170 will be affordable to households earning at or below 30% of the area median income, which is what we mean by deeply affordable. And 95 will be 3 or more bedroom. We have a larger number of units in our for sale this year. I think we're about 150 in our 2022 goals, and we're almost double that this year, in part due to those ARPA funds. We also anticipate 219 units of supportive housing through our current pipeline, 150 units through mandatory housing or those policy units, and more than 220 that may come from additional opportunities in the future. So that all of that together gets us to just under 1,800 units. But we'll take another pause to go back to that Mentimeter poll. And here we're really asking for your specific feedback on the housing opportunity section of the plan.
Awesome, thank you. I think we were getting 4 responses before Katie said. I think we can probably go ahead and move on.
And this next question is just kind of more narrative feedback. So thanks folks for jumping in and adding responses.
Yeah, really great feedback. Thank you. And again, please feel free to elaborate on any of this in the question and answer. It's also helpful just to see whatever other commentary you have. So feel free to do that as well. Ooh, help folks getting evicted. Yep, we're going to talk about that too. It's a great segue. Thank you. All right, Katie, I think we can leave this one open as we continue. Oh, we have one more. Do we have more questions right now? Oh, no, we're going to go back to the presentation, then we'll come back to questions here shortly.
Thanks, Sabrina. Yes, so that was a great segue to the next section, which is our housing stability section. So in this section of our 2023 action plan, we're working across all 3 goals in our housing stability lane of work, which includes focused effort on reducing evictions. So in our first goal, helping households remain in their home and neighborhood of choice. We are going, in the coming year, we are continuing to implement our emergency rental assistance program. This is a federal funding source through the U.S. Treasury Department that we have been implementing to help households who are behind on their rent be able to remain in their homes. So we are continuing to implement that significant resource for our community. Additionally, in our evictions work, we are continuing to work with partners to provide eviction legal defense programs, really targeting outreach to those neighborhoods with the highest rates of evictions. Third, in our work around foreclosures, particularly in income restricted or affordable homes, this is where we have some new programming to come in the new year. So we will be launching new foreclosure prevention and legal assistance programming, as well as HOA fee programming, which together will serve about 250 households annually. Additionally, this is a new strategy in the strategic plan due to council action on this topic this year. And we will be implementing new resources and systems to ensure homeowners are notified and provided with information about resources in the event that their homeowners association initiates a foreclosure. Great. And so back to our Minty poll. You can provide feedback on how these priorities are sitting with you, and then we'll have that narrative question too here in just a second.
one more minute here because I know we were getting 4 responses before, so I just want to see if anybody else wants to jump in. I know not everybody on the call is doing this, but we do appreciate it. For those of you who can, I know it's hard to toggle between Zoom and polls and all the things these days. Okay, Katie, I think you can go ahead and move on.
And that opportunity to just provide any open-ended feedback. And for folks for whom that acronym might be new, that is the no eviction without representation. One thing I will add is folks are putting in their thoughts. This is super helpful feedback on the more mortgage assistance point. Yes, definitely hear those needs. The state of Colorado is actually, they are resourced with significant mortgage assistance programming right now. And so you'll see on our host website that we're directing folks to that resource at this time, since the state has those funds available, but we did during the pandemic provide some mortgage assistance to households. So right now we're doing that through a partnership capacity.
Great. Okay, Katie, if you want to leave that open and we'll just keep moving.
Right, so this is our homelessness resolution section and our priorities in this space. So first, we talked a little bit about it. I can go into a little bit more detail here. This year, or in this coming year, we anticipate investing in an encampment decommissioning model. And this model is one that we have, as we have been looking to our peer cities and learning about what other communities are doing. This is one that's been used successfully in Houston, which has had a significant decrease in their homelessness population. It's really focused on connecting residents experiencing unsheltered homelessness with permanent housing as an alternative to staying unsheltered. And there are a number of proposed budget items in the mayor's budget that would support the implementation of this model. Additionally, another proposed investment in the budget would be funding to continue safe outdoor space and safe parking programming, as well as to pursue policy changes that would retain our ability to provide these programs as an alternative to unsanctioned camping by pursuing long-term solutions for safe outdoor space. Those are allowable right now through temporary zoning that would expire at the end of next year. And we, in order to keep this tool in our toolbox, are examining our policy options there. Second, in our goal to expand successful rehousing, a lot of work in this space, but to highlight in the coming year, we have a number of innovative solutions that we're excited to be implementing upon next year. So that includes expanding supportive housing through the Social Impact Partnerships to Pay for Results Act. This is a partnership and an expansion of our previously successful social impact bond project. This time, we're really looking at high utilizers of both the justice system as well as the healthcare system. And the U.S. Department of Treasury is partnering with us on this one to see if this investment in supportive housing generates healthcare savings. So that's a 7-year project that will be its first full year of implementation in 2023. And we, as I mentioned, are also partnering with the Denver Basic Income Project to provide up to $12,000 per year in basic income to residents experiencing homelessness. A third goal really focused on our shelter system. In the coming year, we are focusing in on improving accessibility of shelters by expanding support for guests with complex needs. For example, folks who need support with activities of daily living, as well as creating spaces that are gender inclusive and designed for all gender identities. Additionally, in our work to support families experiencing homelessness, in the coming year, we're really focusing on how do we provide those safe temporary shelter options when needed, alongside housing focused case management, as well as complementing that with housing investments, like additional supportive housing for families. We will pause and do our poll questions. Again, that opportunity to give us your more open-ended feedback.
This is great. Thank you all again for submitting your comments. We'll leave that open while we continue on.
Great. So in our 2023 action plan priorities for operations, a couple of highlights and key priorities across our goals. So in our work to expand communications and community engagement, in the coming year, focusing on really developing and implementing our engagement strategy that includes everyday people and really focuses in on that two-way communication and more intentional listening. And our second goal, expanding and supporting our partners through transparent, efficient, and effective procurement, contracting, and financial processes. We are piloting performance-based contracting rated fully through the Department of Housing Stability in the coming year to determine the benefits of that approach, any implementation challenges that may come with that, and then also to determine how that can align with the requirements of our various funding sources. Definitely, we've heard interest from our partners in that type of contracting, so we're excited to be piloting that in the coming year. We also are, again, excited about expanding our data system functionality to support key processes like contracting and invoice processing. In our data space, improving our use of data to provide transparency, accountability, informed decision-making, and support continuous improvement. Again, releasing that public-facing financial dashboard to complement reporting that we'll talk about in just a second on our strategic plan progress. And again, building out that data system to improve access to affordable housing and support our prioritization policy. And in our policy goal and our regional and citywide approaches goal this year, we are implementing upon a number of significant policy passages in 2022. So that includes prioritization policy, where we'll have work coming up next year to develop rules and regulations, policies and procedures alongside that data system, as well as implementing expanding housing affordability, as both of those were passed earlier this year. And we will go back to our poll questions, this time for our operations section of the plan.
Thank you all.
Opportunity to provide your kind of open-ended or more narrative feedback on this portion.
Well, I just want to say thank you, because as the communications director, that's very heartening to me. So thanks everybody for the feedback. And yes, we all love Jennifer's team's dashboards. They're going to be so amazing. Awesome. All right. Keep it going.
All right, and we'll keep that open if there's any last thoughts, but we'll switch gears to the financial landscape portion of our presentation tonight, which is really how does our 2023 proposed budget support this plan? As we go through this section, it is important to note that we are still in the proposed budget stage. The final budget is still subject to City Council approval next month, but this reflects where we are today. So first, before we dig into a lot of numbers and budget information, I wanted to just first start with this budget really reflects the priorities of our community. In a survey of Denver residents on priorities for COVID recovery, nearly half of Denver residents prioritized housing and homelessness in that survey. And we are glad to say that a proportionate amount of ARPA funds was allocated to host. And so this budget really does reflect the priorities of the community. And these funds will help us deliver Denver's recovery for the folks most impacted by the pandemic. And our goal here is really to put these investments quickly to work to add housing to our pipeline through hotel acquisitions and supporting connections to housing for the people who most need it. This slide shows you how host budget comes together. And so the first headline for this is that our proposed budget for 2023 is just under $254 million. As you can see, about the bottom part of that is our portion of the city's general fund, which is about $35 million. The next two pieces are host dedicated funding sources, the Affordable Housing Fund, for which we expect just over $46 million, and the Homelessness Resolution Fund. This assumes that a ballot measure that is a measure that is on the ballot in November passes that would allow us to retain the entirety of the funding. And if that passes, we are projecting that to be $48.9 million. We do also receive a variety of federal funds and grants, which make up about $11 million. other funds, there's a whole detail in the 2023 action plan draft that goes through exactly what's included here, but it's a variety of other funding sources that come together to the amount of about $22.5 million. And then you'll see a significant portion here, $88 million, most of which is American Rescue Plan Act funding, is COVID response and recovery funding. This is time limited funding. And it makes up just about a third of this year's proposed budget. This slide shows how we plan to expend or spend those funds in the coming year by the pillars that we just talked about in terms of priorities. I will note that the charts that are in this evening's presentation are updated from those that are in the public comment draft of the action plan as we continue to refine budget, and we will be finalizing them again based on our best budget information for the final draft that will come out in November. But this slide shows that 40% of HOST total budget is allocated to our housing opportunity pillar of work. 6% is allocated to housing stability, 46% is allocated to homelessness resolution, 4% is allocated to operations, and another 4% is allocated for the city's payment to Denver Housing Authority for the DHA Delivers for Denver initiative, or D3, which funds unit development and preservation efforts to expand our supply of affordable housing citywide. We've also provided some similar breakdowns for our Affordable Housing Fund and our Homelessness Resolution Fund as our dedicated revenue streams for HOST. And those funding streams have requirements on how we can use them. And so some of what you see here is related to those things. So for example, the Homelessness Resolution Fund must be spent on people who are experiencing homelessness or exiting homelessness, which is why you don't see a housing stability section there. All of our other funds that aren't the Affordable Housing Fund or the Homelessness Resolution Fund are part of that other category here. This slide takes that same $254 million budget, and this time shows how we spend that by some significant investment types or kind of major activities for the Department of Housing Stability. You can see of our total budget, we are anticipating that about 40% will be spent on shelter and services for residents experiencing homelessness. Just about a fifth or 18% will be spent on housing assistance programs. 32% will be spent on unit development and preservation. There's also that 4% for the DHA payment for D3, which is really complementary to that unit development and preservation piece. And then 7% for administration. And again, we've also broken out those other funds so you can see how that breaks out, but those trends largely kind of mirror and track with the slide we just talked through. Great. And then lastly, I wanted to just talk briefly about where to go to find more information. So you can go to denvergov.org/housing 5-year plan. And that is really our landing page for all things 5-year strategic plan. And it's where we have put our new strategic plan dashboard. So this is a dashboard tool that you all can check out to see what progress we're making. We have 2 pages up right now. One is kind of a highlights page of early successes and some measures that move a bit more quickly for us as hosts. So you can see some of that progress. And I think just today, we launched our 5-year targets page, which will show you our progress on all of the measurable goals, the key kind of measurable goals in that plan. We're continuing to build out that content through the rest of the year, but hope that folks can check out that resource and hope you find it helpful.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's so awesome. Does anybody, let's see, it looks like Jordan has a question. How are we addressing the workforce crisis in our procurements? Burnout and turnover is very common in housing and homeless service work. Are there any ideas we have related to this when considering contract agreements? I don't know if I could answer that for you tonight, but I certainly am happy to share my email and follow up with you, Jordan, if you want to get in touch.
If anybody would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function and I can unmute you.
I will say, Jordan, we are very well aware of that, and we do meet with our partners on a regular basis, and we're always brainstorming with them. I know our Homelessness Leadership Council, which is a lot of our key partners, have talked to us a lot about this and about what we might be able to do to help them. So I know there are ongoing discussions. I just don't know particularly in related to procurements, but would love any ideas that you have as well. And I'm putting my email in the question for you.
Okay, let's go with Therese and then Guy.
Hi, I can't type, so I'm just talking. I have like I think 3 questions, so I can just do them all off quick. The first one, I just wanted to clarify. So the numbers show that there's 219 supportive housing units that will be created and 173 deeply affordable. I wanted to clarify, do we combine those numbers to get a total there of the under 30% AMI housing? Or are some of the ones of the 173 that are counted as the deeply affordable also counted in the 219 supportive housing units?
Those are distinct counts, Therese.
Okay.
So 173 non-supportive housing, deeply affordable, and then the 200 or so supportive housing.
Okay, cool, thank you. Second question is the performance-based procurement. How do we learn more about what that is? Is there just a brief description or where to learn more about that?
That is a great question. I have found there's a White House resource that I have found helpful for a brief overview that we could share, but it's also good to know that that's of interest as we think about any additional content that we may want to put in the plan itself.
So it's something that I could just Google, and that's like a general, like common sort of, it's not like a Denver specific thing. It would be something that would be Googleable. Is that accurate?
Finding my mute. Yes, that is correct. It is not a Denver specific thing, but something that communities across the country are looking at.
Okay. Third question, and I feel like I'm forgetting one, but third question. So earlier when we'd asked for sort of written summaries of some of the proposals that are going in the budget cycle, specifically the new ones. So the one around the navigation centers, the one around the RV buyback program, the one around, what am I forgetting here? The voucher, the locally funded vouchers. It was told to us that there was not a written summary of those proposed programs. And I'm wondering if that has changed yet, or if there's any sort of a written summary of those that can be provided that gives, you know, the basic sort of details of what it is, who would be running it, how the program would be run, you know, any sort of a written description of those programs.
So Jennifer, I can jump in on this because I did ask about this for Therese before. The answer to that was there's not like a complete summary that's been written, because a lot of that will come out through our request for proposals, like in our procurement processes. So we will be putting out you know, RFPs asking providers who might want to apply for those programs. And then there would be, you know, negotiation processes and such that would lay out all the details for those things. So that's why we don't have like the particulars I think you were asking for. And I think I'm happy to like talk over any of like what we know, I think has been pretty publicly presented in both in our budget hearing with City Council, and I'm happy to get a link to that to anyone who wants that. But we haven't written up a formal, like, here's all of the details, because those details are yet to be worked out.
Okay, I'll just comment on that, I think that's a bit crazy that we're proposing things to City Council that we don't have written descriptions of, but that's just my comment on that.
So we can share with you that budget presentation, Therese, and
Yeah, I've seen that, but it doesn't give any sort of detail that I'm looking for.
if there are specific questions that we can help answer on those different things for you, I probably can get you answers to questions maybe easier than just like us writing up a summary, because I think we want to make sure we're getting you the answers that you want, as opposed to just writing up a summary that may not have those answers. So I'm happy to work with you on that more. And I know you have my email address already, so put it in the chat.
I might send a list of questions then. All right,
Yeah, that'll work. That we can work on that. Thank you. And anybody else have any other questions tonight? Thank you for all the really great questions.
Yeah, I had a question. Two questions actually. First of all, does the plan envision eventually phasing out the SOS sites, or is that envisioned to be a permanent piece of the solution for assisting unhoused persons in Denver?
That is a great question. Jennifer, do you want to answer that, or?
I can take a first pass at it, and Sabrina, certainly, if there is anything that you would like to add to that, or to jump in, that would be great. So with safe outdoor spaces, I think what we have found is that it is a helpful tool in our toolbox as we seek to provide a diversity of options for folks while we work on scaling those permanent housing opportunities. And so that's why you see in the plan that we want to continue to have that tool available to us beyond the temporary zoning that ends at the end of next year. That said, we know the permanent solutions to homelessness is getting people into homes. And so always keeping our eye on how we do more of that and ultimately reduce the need for those types of options, because people are in housing. So that's my first take at that. But Sabrina, anything you would add to that?
No, that's absolutely great. Thank you, Jennifer. I think the only other thing that I would say is that community planning and development does the temporary zoning for that, and they already are beginning work on public processes that they will be going through in coming months, so that they are well ahead of the curve when that temporary zoning would be ending next year, to get that through council approval for further extension.
Great, thank you. And then just one other quick question. I mean, thank you so much for laying out the detailed budget numbers. I really appreciate that. But I can't help but notice, of course, the third of the budget numbers coming from the 88 million from COVID relief funds. And while I think this is an absolutely essential way to be spending them, I'm curious, is there a plan for backfilling that revenue once those funds are no longer coming to the city?
That's a great question. Thank you.
I think one thing to know is that American Rescue Plan Act dollars have a multi-year horizon. So we're getting an allocation of ARPA funds in the second tranche, potentially as proposed in the mayor's budget. Those dollars have through the end of 2026 to be spent, and they are often looked to for kind of more one-time capital investments for some of those reasons that you mentioned. So I think we are being thoughtful, and that the city as a whole is being thoughtful about how we utilize those one-time funds, and appreciate that question.
Thank you. I really appreciate your answer. Thanks.
Mary, you can ask your question now.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for this presentation. It is really helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time. I did just want to ask about a couple of things that may be affecting affordable housing providers in the coming years. And just wanted to ask how you're thinking about that, how that factors in towards sort of the unit counts that we're moving towards. You know, we're really supportive of the prioritization policy, but without having the rules and regs in place, it's a little unclear what the cost of that program will be to affordable housing providers. And then obviously, if newer passes, that will be a pretty big impact on affordable housing providers as well, especially being, you know, the folks that can't and wouldn't pass that on to their tenants, but recognizing that that's going to cost an FTE or start costing units. So Has there been any consideration as to how goals will be met as these programs are implemented that increase cost to housing providers?
So on the first piece on the prioritization policy, our 2023 goals do not contemplate an impact of that, primarily because the implementation date of the policy is July 1st, 2024. And so we recognize there's a real need because of all of those details to engage in robust conversation with stakeholders through the development of the rules and regulation, as well as to get engagement on the data system we're developing, which we hope will alleviate some quite a bit of that potential burden. So it doesn't show up in 2023, but I think we will be informed by those conversations for 2024. So that was the first piece, and I am forgetting the second part of your question. So Sabrina or Katie or Mary, if you could remind me the second part, happy to take that.
Just in a similar vein, thinking about the cost impact of newer if it passes, which I imagine is probably a similar answer in regards to the implementation timeline.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, so the no eviction without representation is a ballot measure forthcoming this November. These numbers do not predict an outcome there. And so if there is an impact there, I think that would be something that we would seek to understand in the coming year, and maybe a reason why, maybe context for our progress that we make next year, but we haven't made any particular assumptions in those unit counts at this stage.
Anyone else? Well, we really very much appreciate you guys taking time out of your evenings to spend the time with us, learning more about this and to giving us comments. We are going to continue taking public comments through. Do we have a slide on that, Katie, where people can get that information?
Yep, just 1 second.
Thanks. Just make sure that's up for everybody. And we're going to run into a slow computer because it's the end of the night, right? That's how it always goes. We'll get that information up here for you so that you guys can take a look at that. And if you want to send us any additional emails or anything, you're welcome to do that. My email is just Sabrina, SABRINA .Allie, ALLIE @denvergov.org. It's in the chat a couple of different times as well. You're welcome to send that feedback to me, and we will make sure that Jennifer and team get it, and we will be incorporating all of this great feedback into our oh, and then we have our Survey Monkey as well. That's a great way to get us that information. We will be incorporating all of that feedback into our final draft, which will go to our housing stability strategic advisors, which is our advisory board, at their next meeting in November, and they will make a decision whether to formally adopt this plan and at that meeting. So that's where we're headed with this. And then, as you know, there's also this simultaneous budget approval process with City Council. So keep your eyes peeled on that and how that will support this plan. If you have any other questions, please do let us know. And thanks again for spending time attending tonight. Have a good night.